And that, folks, is a wrap on Auburn's 2020 college football season, going down to Northwestern 35-19. Here to break that down, Matt Scalisi joining me now for a post-game recap brought to you by our sponsors, Andrews Sports Medicine. And, well, I just take a deep breath, a deep sigh. Certainly, I guess not the expectation. The score I'm looking at, 35-19, was not expecting even that many points to be scored, especially in favor of Northwestern, just being able to move the ball time and time again. Auburn trailed 14-6 at the halftime. They came out of the half. They looked like they had momentum, and then things kind of just didn't roll their way. So kind of just wanted to get your overall thoughts on what you saw out on the field today.
Yeah, and I don't really think that 35 points is quite indicative of how the Auburn defense played all day long. I think they were, they really limited Northwestern from doing much in terms of being explosive because that's not what Northwestern does. But, I think we talked about this morning on the pregame show, Lauren, that I thought one of the keys for Auburn today was to be patient and understand that this game was probably going to be ugly for a while and that it was going to be difficult for Auburn to move the ball. This was a really good defense, very physical defense, and it was going to be tough for Auburn to do the thing that they like to do the most, which tends to be go down the field on the deep ball and run the ball. And they were missing some key guys in the running game too. So look, it did get frustrating. It was ugly for much of the game. And unfortunately, I don't think that Bo Nix and Auburn stayed patient in this game. I think they got frustrated. I think they let it get the better of them. And for the most part, they just really weren't able to put a full offensive drive together today during this game. And, I think this is the end result. If you let it get away from you late because you allow your frustration to take over the game, this is what happens. This is what the final score looks like. I think Auburn had every chance to win this game, and they just didn't execute properly.
Yeah, execution, a huge critical key factor in all of this. 2 field goals in the first half, obviously didn't get on the board with a touchdown until the second half. It was good. It was great, though, to see Auburn freshman wide receiver Elijah Canyon. He got his first career catch and then his first career touchdown on the day. Of course, Bo Nix going down there with an injury. I guess, was it late in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, Cord Sandberg had to come in. And I'll be honest with you, Matt, there for a minute, I had to kind of jog my memory, the thought process of like, okay, wait, who comes in for Bo Nix if Bo Nix goes down and is hurt? So certainly not an ideal situation. Obviously, Bo Nix came back in to finish out the game, but man, it just, it was one thing after another. And it just seemed like, especially early in this football game, Auburn not able to protect its quarterback. And defensively, it just seemed like they weren't able to get pressure on Northwestern, throughout much of the football game. And so, it's just, it sucks. It's frustrating. You get to the end of the season. And here's the thing, the way that a lot of coaches, that I've talked to throughout the year have been looking at this has been, this is not only a put a bow on 2020, but a springboard in 2021. We talked about this on the broadcast earlier, this being an opportunity for guys to show up and show out for a new head coach, Brian Harsin, and whatever staff he puts together for the new Auburn regime. And, it just wasn't a good showing. And there just wasn't a lot to hang your hats on and be excited for looking ahead to 2021. And, again, some people might look at that as like, okay, we just got to put this one past us, time to move on. But it's definitely a tough way to go out. And certainly we'll have a lot of question marks going into next season.
I'll say this. I think that as frustrating as the game was to watch, in terms of looking forward, Lauren, this is part of why Auburn made a change, right? I mean, I may or may not have agreed with the decision at the time, but I think this program was not in a great place as this season went on. They didn't really have an offensive identity. They were never able to really solve some of the recurring problems that kept happening to this team offensively year after year. And it was never about talent necessarily, certainly, at least not at every position. And look, Gus was pretty far into his tenure at Auburn. These are the kind of problems you shouldn't be having the same problems over and over again in a coach, in a coaching regime that is almost a decade old. So I think this is why a change was made. It's frustrating to watch that play out to the end, but I think the hope is that Brian Harsin takes the pieces that are out there and is able to try to build something new around it that masks some of the problems and takes advantage of some of the strengths. And I think one bit of hope, I think, to go out on today was Elijah Canyon, who is a guy that I don't think I've ever even heard his name before. We have never really seen this guy do much of anything for Auburn this season. Comes out here and makes an incredible touchdown play where he's pushing a guy off of him as he goes into the end zone. So there are little glimmers of hope for sure for this team going forward. I think the issue is it's really time for a clean slate. It's time to get back down to ground level and build something new. And it may not be that you're able to turn this team into a competitor for the SEC championship in 1 year or even 2 years. But I think the hope is that there are enough pieces there right now, enough young guys there, like Elijah Canyon, like some of the young guys that we've seen on defense this year, that in a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, those guys are the upperclassmen. They're the leaders of the program, that you can potentially build something that is more competitive going forward. So it's not fun to see your team finish a season this way, but I think there were moments today that we will probably look back on 2 and 3 years from now and say there was signs that this guy was capable of doing something special.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of to close things out, they had Brian Harsin. He was there at the game. They interviewed him during the broadcast. So it kind of became, somewhat of another press conference for Coach Harsin to kind of discuss, his goals, aspirations for the team. Obviously, the key thing there, we've got a lot of work to do. And, certainly that being the case, will be interesting to see who he brings in. I saw that Tom Green, our beat reporter for Auburn, had tweeted from a Boise State reporter that the expectation was that they would not be, that he likely would not be bringing in the coaching staff he had with him at Boise State. So, that whole thought process of clean slate might be exactly what the doctor ordered and sort of what you mentioned there. And, it seems like, based on sort of the comments and stuff I'm seeing here, that Auburn fans are excited and ready for this new era. And, it's going to take some time, but it sounds like people are kind of ready to turn the page and kind of put this one behind them and move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is this is a game that everybody's ready to put behind them. It's a season everybody's ready to put behind them at Auburn. And, you're hopeful that this time next year, that whether Auburn has a better record or not, it feels like things are moving in a different direction. It feels like this is a different program with a different feel to it. And, look, I think that this coaching staff, especially on the defensive side, was able to hold things together as best as they can. And I think you're going to see a lot of these guys land at really strong programs, because what Kevin Steele and his staff did with the Auburn defense ultimately was very impressive. They gave Auburn a consistently strong defense for multiple years, year after year. And I think maybe some fans forget what it was like before that. It wasn't that way at Auburn. It was not elite year after year. And I think that they will leave a legacy with a lot of the players that are still there. Now, I think they'll probably end up, those coaches will end up having strong careers elsewhere. And I think it will be very interesting to see how much carryover there is on the Harsin administration, if you will, with that coaching staff. I think particularly I'm expecting a lot of changeover on the offensive side of the staff. But it wouldn't shock me if they keep a guy or two on the defensive side.
No doubt. Matt Scalisi, we appreciate the insight as always. That is a wrap on Auburn's football season, falling to Northwestern 35-19. We appreciate it, and we appreciate our sponsors, Andrews Sports Medicine. Andrews Sports Medicine, aggressively pursuing victory over injury. Call 205-939-3699.